some moves from the combine.
The tape tells the story.
To the draft. Welcome to Chicago. And camp. And everything to get the offseason. Friday night at 6 on Fox Local.
Next up, Sherry.
All right, everyone. Good afternoon. Thanks so much for being here online for another day of Chicago Live. We're doing some work in the studio, so this is our home for the next couple of days here. Let's see. You can't hear me in the back? You can't hear me? Okay, all right. So we're doing some work, as you can see. So this is our home for the next couple of days, and we're kind of getting things together here. But thank you so much for being here online as we get ourselves together here for another day of Chicago Live. It's Tuesday. I'm your host, Anita Blanton, and I will be with you through 4 p.m. So let's go over a few of the things that we have lined up for this first hour that we have here together. Chicago sports history is going to be on display for a live auction. You know, there's a lot of Chicago sports history that could obviously be recognized or highlighted, bidded on, but of course, Heritage Auctions Director of Production is going to be joining me to talk about a surging collectibles market and the new additions connected to Shoeless Joe Jackson, huge, Michael Jordan, massive, and Kobe Bryant. I mean, what an astounding collection, and we're going to be able to find out about some of the prices that they're expecting for these items to go for, what exactly the items are, all of those things we're going to cover shortly. Also, the one and only, much beloved Harvard astronomer Avi Loeb is going to be joining me back on the show today. We know so many of you love him. I always love when he's a part of the show, so we got him back, and he's going to be talking about a new and very interesting find by 3i Atlas. We have been following 3i Atlas since the fall, it seems like. Maybe before that, but definitely we've had a lot of conversations about the images and the latest developments with 3i Atlas for several months now. Let's put it that way. And we always learn a thing or two whenever Professor Loeb is on the show. We also anticipate that any moment now we will have Paris Schutz, our own political reporter Paris Schutz, on the show as well. And he just got out of a meeting, a press conference with Mayor Johnson, okay? Over the last few days, there have been a lot of developments within City Hall. And so going back to the end of last week, Paris has done a couple of exclusive interviews with people who have been high profile, people who have been fired from the Johnson administration, and it has been very interesting to hear their stories and also the back and forth that's been happening between the people who have been let go, and we're talking about Gary and Gatewood, who was the deputy mayor of community safety, and then also kind of his number two, who was recently let go as well. And so Paris went to this media availability so that he could press the mayor on that a little bit more as to what's going on. What would he say? For the record, we've gotten some sources within the Johnson administration who have talked about hostile work environment, but we're actually hearing the same thing on the other side. And so it has become a bit of a he said, if you will, from the people who, the players involved. But what would we get from the mayor on the record as to what happened? We're also, we've heard from even many members of the religious community. I mean, Father Flager sent out a notice just at the end of last week where they're kind of asking, okay, listen, we don't know all of the ins and outs as to why these two would be let go. We have a lot of questions about the deputy mayor of community safety being let go right before summer break. I mean, what kind of continuity will we have? Many people in the community, especially communities where you have a higher prevalence of violence, they may have, had this person's phone number to be able to call when things went down, to say, we need you here. And so what type of relationship would you have with somebody that gets put into that particular role and they've maybe been on the job for a month and a half? There are a lot of questions right now, and we don't have all of those answers just yet, but we're continuing to press for it. So Paris went over to City Hall to try to ask the mayor for a few more answers for our own sake and for also the people in the community who are asking those questions as well, especially as we get ready for, I mean, we're on spring break, many of the kids are on spring break right now, but I think the bigger concern is getting towards the summer break, where we do have warmer conditions outside and do typically see a rise in violent incidents that take place. Unfortunately, that is a trend that continues to happen. And so Paris just walked in. Go ahead, come on in, Paris. You can come right behind. We're in our new home, so settle in.
Is it a permanent home?
It is the new home for this
okay.
week.
All
So
right.
go ahead, settle in, and we'll resize this and get you in here. So we could talk.
I need to get a little closer to you. We got to get cozy here,
so we
Anita.
could talk a little bit more.
Sorry, I just had some of the chili from our chili contest.
We did have a chili contest going on downstairs. But tell me about the mayor's press conference.
Well, this is the first time the mayor's really held a public press conference since these firings on Thursday. The firings of Deputy Mayor for Public Safety Gary and Gatewood, and then Violence Prevention Officer Manny Whitfield. And he faced a lot of questions today. I would say 6 or 7 or more questions on, well, why did you do this?
Yeah.
Because we still can't drill down on why this sudden firing of his top public safety officials in a time where the violent crime rate has come down over the last couple years. There's been some success there. So why did you want to go in a different direction? We know the allegations have flown. We know that those 2 fired officials came to us and talked about their belief that there was a hostile work environment on behalf of the mayor, some personnel issues, and most notably for Chicago residents, they accused the mayor's senior leadership team of this hostility toward law enforcement. I think it's notable that Chicagoans might want to know, well, is their mayor and his top team, do they not have the backs of law enforcement? And today, Mayor Johnson categorically denied that. And, he started his press conference honoring the life of Mike Altman, the firefighter, addressing the tragedy of Sheridan Gorman, and saying, I show up. I show up for first responders, and public safety is my #1 priority. And so, he pushed back on this notion that somehow he doesn't have the back of law enforcement. And at least publicly, he has had many press conferences where he talks about Superintendent Snelling and the important work that he does. And so I asked him why then these two officials would say something like this. And he said, I can't speak to why they believe what they believe. And, you know, he was asked many, many, many times, well, then what was this about? And he just kind of, you know, demurred a little bit and said, well, we have a whole of government approach to bringing down violent crime, but didn't say, well, what was wrong with the way they were doing it?
Right, because they were just told we're going in a different direction.
Right. And then the allegations started flying. You know, like sources in the mayor's office alleged they were responsible for hostile work environment. And so it's hard to drill down. The other thing that Gatewood and Whitfield said was that they have filed an inspector general complaint.
And they said they did that months ago.
In October about hostile work environment. And the mayor today said this is the first that he's become aware of that. So,
But they filed it with the OIG?
With the OIG, yes. Deborah Witzberg, IG. I did put in a call to their office and have not gotten back. They typically don't comment on any investigation unless it's closed. So, you know, we'll have to just kind of drill down on what's behind this. Clearly, there is something behind it. Clearly, it seems to be a personnel-driven thing, ideologically driven thing. You know, senior staff in the mayor's office, notably the chief of staff, Cristina Pasiones-Zayas, and Jason Lee, the top political director, you know, they've rubbed people the wrong way before. And what these two are saying is, like, you know, there's a culture of if you try to hold people accountable, then you get a target on your back. And what they're insinuating by that is there was a certain employee that was under their purview that was close with the mayor, close with the senior leadership, they kind of put there. And this employee, they said, was not performing, not showing up enough for work, and they put her on a performance review plan, improvement plan, and filed that with HR, and they were expecting to get that whole process going. Instead, they got fired. So they're insinuating that it might have been retaliation for this, you know, for trying to discipline this employee.
Very interesting. And I think, you know, for community leaders, I was saying this right before you walked in, I think for a lot of community leaders, they're looking at the timing of all of this from the standpoint of we're not far from summer break. I mean, we're on spring break right now. Summer break will be here before you know it. And I mean, there is an interim in place, but like that's not a person that you've established a relationship with over time.
And community safety nonprofits and religious groups like one led by Father Flager have basically echoed that concern. We're coming up on the summer months. We cannot do this piecemeal. We need to have someone that's been in there. Why are we changing course like this right before the summer? This is bad policy. This is very dangerous and troubling. And you know, there's some rumors as to who their chosen replacement is going to be. I'm going to drill down on that. I have a name. You know, I'm not ready to report that yet, but what I can say is the direction is going to be more in the realm of, you know, community outreach and less in the realm of law enforcement. So more in the realm of restorative justice, that kind of thing. And that's what I gather from this person that they're considering right now, that they are going full on in restorative justice. And, you know, I mean, Gatewood and Whitfield felt they might have had a target on their backs because some of the senior leadership in the mayor's office thought they were too close to police. And that's where they say this hostility to law enforcement. So
and notably, as we go back and forth about this aspect of community safety and public safety, the police, we have not heard from Superintendent Snelling on any of this.
Oh, I think he doesn't want to touch it with
I don't think so
pole.
Either. But I mean, it all affects him.
Yeah, it does. It'd be very curious to see what he thinks. You know, how this does affect him. By all accounts, they had a good relationship, he and Gatewood. Gatewood was the point person in the mayor's office for all things police, and so that was the go-between. And it's important to have that relationship, especially when you've got a mayor coming from a movement that has been, you know, not favorable, I think, to police. They're talking about some of the problems and excesses that we know have gone on, especially policing for Black and brown communities. You know, we can't, of course, we can't deny that there's a history of problems. But what Gatewood and Whitfield felt was that just went too far into hostility for the police now, which you can't have when you need to keep public safety for all the residents. So, yeah, I think Snelling is always tried to stay out of the politics. He just does his job. He wants to be the superintendent of Chicago and continue, you know, driving down these rates of violent crime that we've seen. And so he is not going to talk about any of this. I'm fairly certain.
But it's just odd,
Yeah.
you know, in the midst of all of these
odd.
discussions about like, oh, the crime rate is going down, or oh, we've been able to champion the actual superintendent.
The guys in charge with the policy, really,
Yeah.
the policy side of public safety and law enforcement are the ones fired.
Yeah.
And so that's why you hear these community groups saying, wait a second, guys, this work is too important to just do it piecemeal and bring in someone brand new.
Yeah, and I think maybe, Deputy Mayor Gatewood, I think their thought on things was that everyone needs to be at the table.
Right.
You know,
Yes.
you do need to have
Yes.
the police at the table.
Right.
You do need to have these
Right.
community leaders
Well,
or crime intervention
So
groups.
what really rubbed salt in the wounds of Whitfield was the fact that the person that did the firing is Kennedy Bartley, a top mayoral aide,
Mm-hmm.
who has in the past, we reported on this, has been on podcasts saying abolish the police, calling them effing pigs. Now, she had to go apologize for that when she was hired, and he said, this is who you're having fire me. So consider the philosophy of the people staying on board and the ones leaving. There are folks in that office that have held this abolish the police viewpoint. Now, the mayor has been very clear in his public statements about his support for law enforcement, as any mayor would have to be.
Right.
But when you look at some of the folks that are working right under him, and you start to wonder
What's the mentality?
what
of the
their
office.
mentality really is.
Yeah. All right. Well, we will definitely be paying attention to where you go from here with this.
So much to follow.
There is. You know.
We are going to have, I should, on the Chicago Report, we're going to have the controversial FOP president, John Catanzaro, to talk about all of these things, including
I'm sure
Sheridan
he'll
Gorman.
have
He's got some thoughts.
I'm sure he's got some thoughts and willing to share them. Eager to share them.
It'll be a great interview.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
All right, everybody. Give us 2 minutes. We'll be right back. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Wouldn't you love to take a trip to Rome and learn more? And we know that there's a group of mayors from Illinois that's getting ready to make that trip. And not only are they getting ready to make a trip to Rome, but of course, you know, a group of Chicagoland mayors going to Rome. You have to take some time to meet with the Pope, or hope that the Pope has some time to meet with you. How about that one? I have the mayor of Rosemont who is joining me right now. Thank you so much for your time.
How are you?
I'm
Good to
doing
see you.
very well. Great to see you again. We appreciate having you here, Mayor Stevens. And tell me a little bit about what you all are going to be doing on this mission to Rome.
So Brad Cole, the director at the Illinois Municipal League, has put together a group of about 50 of us, and we are going over to the Vatican, and we will have a private audience with Pope Leo.
All right, so a private audience, does that mean that the whole conversation is going to be private, or do you know what you all are going to ask him about or try to talk to him about?
Oh, I think that all I'm going to do is ask for blessings for people that I know are in need. I'm sure the talk will go a little bit to the White Sox because that seems to be a hot button issue in our area. And being a White Sox fan, we can use all the divine intervention we can get.
At the start of the season especially. Give a blessing for the whole season right in time.
Absolutely.
When do you all leave for the trip?
So we leave Saturday afternoon and arrive then on Sunday morning. And the IML has set up a real detailed and laid out itinerary for us. And then on Monday, we get to go to a mass and then to see the Pope and meet His Holiness. I'm really excited because I get to bring my 13-year-old son with me. This is going to be really, really exciting and hopefully educational for him as well. And in addition to being able to see and meet His Holiness, the architecture and just the history of everything that we're going to encounter, I think is going to be something pretty spectacular to remember forever.
Now, have you gone on one of these public diplomacy missions before?
No, this is the first one.
Okay, all right. I was wondering maybe where they've gone in the past as opposed to making this trip to Rome, or if it typically is to Rome, or if they kind of set a different place each time.
As far as the Illinois Municipal League, I'm not certain that there's anything on a regular basis that they do. I know several years ago when Governor Ryan was the governor, a group of my colleagues went to China, and that was actually over 9/11, and they were stuck there for 4 or 5 more days.
Oh my goodness.
Because of the airport system being shut down.
Oh my goodness! Wow. I mean, what a critical time. And I mean, are you at all concerned about like the status of our airports or travel right now? Does it give you any hesitation?
Well, fortunately, being from Rosemont, I can almost walk to O'Hare Field, but I still got to get through the TSA, and I think that things, hopefully, with spring break, should be fluid. But again, it's just part of traveling around this time of the year as well. I think that with the group going as a group, I know we'll have people that we can rely on each other to provide support and get in and out and get on our way.
So tell me a little bit about like when you make a trip like this, what do you bring back to your constituents? Like what does it do to you to come back after a trip like this? Is it going to be things that you learn there that you bring back? I mean, physically, do you bring anything back? Well, what do you bring back with you?
Well, I think that you go there with a complete open mind, and while I am a Catholic, I'm not overly religious, and I'm hoping to learn a few things about the Catholic religion as well. And make it a teaching moment for my son. That's what's more important, I think, on a personal level than anything. And I'm going there asking for blessings for everybody in my community, the ill and those in need, to make sure that as the mayor, I in a small community, we look out for everybody there, and that's really the impetus. I don't know that we can bring any of that architecture back or anything along those lines, but I just think this is going to be a tremendously educational trip for both me and my son and everybody in the group.
Yeah, are there some specific sites that you're hoping to get to while you're there and that have some maybe significant meaning to you?
Well, we were told by Brad Cole from the IML, the bus leaves on time and you better be ready to go. I've been sort of perusing the itinerary to make sure there's a public mass that we're going to go to. That we're going to meet with the Ambassador Birch. There are some things that they've got set up, and then there's just a few windows of free time to go and do and as at our leisure what we'd like to do. So again, there's some of my colleagues, our former representative, now mayor of Elmwood Park, Skip Saviano, former representative and now mayor of Evergreen Park, Kelly Burke, Mayor Lamont, Johnny Goffsky. They're all in this group. Franco Paladipietro from Bloomingdale, who's also a former representative. So there's a lot of folks that I've worked with in the past on legislative issues. Now we're going to get to do something more on a private scale.
And for the Municipal League, they really tout these trips for international diplomacy and moving forward with global partnerships. Can you talk about the importance of those two concepts right now?
Well, as the mayor of Rosemont, we welcome international travelers on a year-round basis to our convention center and to many of the businesses that are within our community. I think that having relationships with those in foreign lands is important for everybody because we all come from somewhere. And I think that that's an important thing, the outreach. And again, the organization that is the IML has done a phenomenal job in setting up some meetings with, like I said, Ambassador Birch and people like that we can hopefully forge relationships with. And who knows what could come out of this.
Yeah, and Ambassador Birch, of course, a Chicago native. How cool is that to be able to go over to Rome and connect with other Chicagoans, other people from Chicagoland, the Pope and the and the former ambassador?
Well, that's very unique, and ironically, Phil Stefani, the restaurateur, will be over there at the same time. And from what I understand, he's building a restaurant on Vatican property. So there's some deep roots there. I know he's got a home there, and he travels there quite often. So we're going to have lunch with Phil. And again, I'm excited as can be. I'm not really crazy about the 9 hours on the plane, but that's what it takes to get there, and I'm really happy to be able to go.
Well, I think it's an awesome opportunity for you, and as you said, maybe most importantly for your son at such a young age to be able to take in a trip like this. I'm sure he won't like that 9 hours either, but hopefully it will all be worth it in the end.
Well, yep, we're excited. And actually, we're leaving from Rome and meeting up with Mom and our daughter Juliana in Paris. While we're over there, we're going to hit Paris Disney for a couple of days while we're all on spring break. So this is going to be a memorable trip for all of us.
How awesome. Oh my goodness. Well, enjoy it all. Enjoy it all. I love that the whole family is getting in on it, and you'll have to update us when you get back.
Well, we'll definitely send out some press releases with some great pictures. And again, can't wait to be back with you.
Okay, and make sure you ask the Pontiff for a blessing for ChicagoLIVE as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you. We'll take care, and safe travels to you and to all who will be on that trip. Everybody, it's 1:28. Give us 2 minutes. We'll be right back. right, welcome back, everyone. 1:32 right now, and we always love to have the one and only Harvard astronomer Avi Loeb on the show. And we've been tracking 3i Atlas for several months, but there's something new and very interesting that's piquing a lot of people's attention, getting a lot of people's attention right now. So let's go ahead and bring in Professor Loeb. How are you today?
Thanks for having me. It's a great pleasure to join you.
We always enjoy having you here. Tell us about deuterium. Am I saying that correct?
Yeah, so hydrogen, we all know, is the simplest atom, the most abundant atom in the universe. It has a proton in the nucleus and an electron orbiting around it. But in principle, you could add a neutron, which is a neutral particle, to the nucleus, and it will still be a hydrogen atom, but with a neutron in addition to the proton, and that's called deuterium. It turns out that during the very hot initial state of the universe, about 20 minutes after the Big Bang, there was some deuterium made, and about 1 part in of order 50,000 or so hydrogen atoms are deuterium. So that's a small fraction, 1 in 50,000. But then as we look in the solar system, we find this fraction in the sun, we find it in Jupiter. In the salt water on Earth, the fraction is a little larger, by about a factor of 10 or so. But still, it's a very small fraction of deuterium, but it's easy to isolate it from seawater. And in fact, during the Manhattan Project, Edward Teller raised the question of if we detonate an atomic explosion, would it ignite the deuterium in the atmosphere, in the ocean? Immediately Hans Bethe calculated that would not be the case because of radiation losses, this process will fizzle out. In principle, deuterium is a very good constituent within fusion fuel. When we are doing fusion experiments, and in the future there might be fusion reactors, deuterium and another isotope of hydrogen, tritium, are the best components of fusion fuel. Now, an interesting question is how different is the abundance of deuterium in 3i Atlas? This is an interstellar object that came to visit the inner solar system, and we were able to observe it. And in fact, the Webb telescope detected deuterium in 2 molecules. One is water, and the second was methane. And in both of them, well, in the case of water, 1 in 100 hydrogen atoms was deuterium. In the case of methane, 1 in 30 was deuterium. That's an abundance that is 1,000 times more than you find in the sun and or the planets. And the question is why? Why is deuterium so abundant in this particular interstellar visitor? One possibility that is raised by the authors of these reports is that perhaps this object was produced in very cold environments of ancient stars that formed 10 to 12 billion years ago, shortly after the Big Bang. And the problem with that suggestion is that there is just not enough material in heavy elements to account for the carbon, oxygen that we see in 3i Atlas. There is just not enough to produce a population of objects such that one of those objects will be observed over a period of a 5-year survey that we conducted before we found 3i Atlas. So, and we are missing the mark by several orders of magnitude. And so it's just not clear indeed whether this was the origin. And one should always ask, could it be that the overabundance of deuterium, a factor of 1,000 relative to the primordial abundance, is a technological signature, because deuterium is used as fusion fuel in the experiments that we're conducting.
I am astounded by that. And I mean, when was the last, and what was the context maybe? behind the last conversations that you had about deuterium? I mean, in terms of what we're seeing now versus the last time that you really had a conversation about deuterium being detected?
Well, it's an amazing feat of the Webb telescope that was able to get spectroscopy to that precision to infer deuterium. And we didn't have that conversation until this data was released, and the data was taken just a few months ago. So this is very new. But there are also other anomalies of 3I Atlas that are not widely discussed. For example, we do see three mini jets coming out of the nucleus, and they're symmetrically separated from each other. Nobody discusses how come they are so symmetric. And is this evidence for thrusters, or is it just a natural occurrence of pockets of ice on the surface of a rock? And there are also questions about why is the trajectory so fine-tuned to be within 5 degrees of the planets around the sun? Why was there nickel with very little iron detected early on around this object? Usually nickel and iron come in comparable quantities. Altogether, I listed the 22 anomalies about this object. We clearly don't understand much of the properties of this object. It looks very different from comets that we are used to in the solar system. And, you know, the one possibility we should always think about is you could have a situation with a Trojan horse, meaning an object that looks completely natural or not unthreatening from the outside, but in the inside, it's different. It might have some technological gadgets inside. And of course, this is the story of the city of Troy residents who did not suspect anything, accepted the Trojan horse, and then realized that it's an existential threat for them. So we should always consider that, because if we wanted to reach interstellar space, this would be a good approach. We could plant a capsule of technology in the belly of an interstellar object. 3I Atlas is moving much faster than our fastest rockets. In fact, it was near two of our spacecraft, the Europa Clipper and the JUICE that were launched by the European Space Agency. So it was next to them in November, and it just crossed Jupiter last week. These two spacecraft will reach Jupiter in 2030, 2031, just to show you how much faster it is. And if we wanted to reach interstellar space, this would have been our best opportunity to put a payload on 3I Atlas and let it take a hitchhike. In principle, you know, that could be a mechanism by which other civilizations launch equipment to space.
And let me ask you this. I mean, we have been watching 3I Atlas for quite some time now. What do you think is next for it?
Well, it's now fading away. And so I summarized 22 anomalies that we had known about it. Now there is the last one, which is the deuterium abundance. I haven't seen the data obtained when it crossed Jupiter, came within 53.6 million kilometers from Jupiter, which is just the distance at which Jupiter's gravity dominates over the sun's gravity. There is the Juno spacecraft near Jupiter that could potentially provide us with the final data on 3I Atlas, but that data was not yet shared. And that will be pretty much the best we can hope for, because in the future it would just fade away, and we won't know more about it. It was an amazing opportunity for us to, in principle, intercept it and land on it or extract some materials from it. Being close to it would have allowed us to take a close-up photograph, and that would have told us about its nature. Scooping some material from it would have allowed us to actually study whether there are any building blocks of life as we know it, even if it's natural, even if it's just an iceberg. But we haven't done so because we were not prepared. And so my hope is that in the coming decade, the Rubin Observatory in Chile will be able to identify dozens of objects like it. There must have been a lot of them that we missed in the past because this one was very bright, and it was also aligned with the planets, giving us an excellent opportunity to use our space assets to probe it or come close to it. But we haven't taken that opportunity because we were surprised. So I think the hope is that in the future we'll be more prepared, and that includes building also a counterpart to the Rubin Observatory, because the Rubin Observatory is in Chile. It monitors the southern sky. We want a similar survey telescope monitoring the northern sky, and there is a plan for the Argus array being supported by the Schmidt Foundation, and that could actually cover the entire sky together with Rubin. And in addition to that, we should plan for intercept missions that will be waiting for the next opportunity to come close to an interstellar visitor, because we should never assume that what we will see in the future must be a reflection of what we've seen until now within the solar system. And these objects spent millions to billions of years traveling to our backyard, and it's just a lost opportunity for us not to examine them, because for us to go to where they came from would take millions to billions of years. So nobody is patient enough to make that journey, and these objects made the journey, and so we should check them. And there is always the chance that it's not just a rock, that it might represent some alien technology, in which case it will be revolutionary for the future of humanity.
Oh, you said a lot there just in that last line. So you kind of touched on this when you mentioned, going where it came from. But a lot of people do think that the deuterium suggests or maybe gives us a window into where it came from. Do you agree with that?
Well, so the suggestion is that those level of enrichment of deuterium, and also I should say carbon-12, which is an isotope of carbon-12 relative to carbon-13, if you combine that information that was inferred from the Webb telescope data just this month, then it implies a very ancient environment of an old star that had a planetary system. This material must have assembled into 3A Atlas maybe 10 to 12 billion years ago. I should say that the age of the solar system is only 4.6 billion years. So this object must be more than twice the age of the solar system, if they are correct. But as I mentioned before, I did a calculation, and there is just not enough material in those systems that the scientists are assigning 3A Atlas to, so to account for a population of such icebergs. So I do think that there is a puzzle here, one out of many, about this visitor. And we should be happy when things do not line up, because they represent an opportunity for us to learn something new. Experts very often want to pretend that we understand everything, so they avoid discussing those facts that we can't figure out. And instead, I think it should be the other way around. We should focus on the things that we cannot explain, because once we collect enough data, and we might learn something new that we haven't thought about before. And our imagination is limited by our experiences, and those were mostly solar system related in the past. So here we have an opportunity to meet with visitors and learn what lies beyond the Earth. And I want to mention that in perspective, because in recent weeks we heard from President Obama, who was asked whether aliens are real, and he said yes, they are. But and in fact, when he entered office, he wanted to know if there is a laboratory where the specimen and the evidence for extraterrestrials may be, and he was told there is no such laboratory. But nevertheless, it shows you the level of curiosity. And then, of course, President Trump directed the Pentagon in response to that to release any information, the Pentagon and related agencies, to release any information related to extraterrestrial life and intelligence, implying that there is something that the U.S. government has. This information is currently classified, but it's very puzzling, and I would love to see it and help government figure it out, because obviously, if it relates to national security, we're dealing with objects that behave in unusual ways because we are not aware of what is being produced by adversarial nations. We should figure this out. But if it behaves in ways that humans cannot reproduce, it's even more exciting. And I would love to know more about this data. And as you know, I'm leading the Galileo project that is currently operating 3 observatories. We now are able to figure out distances to objects in the sky, so we can figure out their velocity, their acceleration, and tell whether they are outliers relative to human-made technologies. And I told my research team, if you find anything that looks unusual, you can wake me up at the middle of the night. I'm all for it. And without curiosity, without being open to the possibility that there might be something unusual going on, we will never discover it. And I should also mention, in this context, I wrote an essay on medium.com. That's where you can find all the updates about my work. I wrote a couple of weeks ago an essay about an image from the Curiosity rover that was obtained by several of its cameras from different angles, and they documented a cylinder that is about 20 centimeters in length, roughly the palm of your hand, a cylinder that was spotted on the surface of Mars at a distance from those cameras on the Curiosity rover. NASA never paid attention to that, and when alerted, they didn't make any comment about that. But that's not really the issue. The issue is we see a cylinder that is clearly not natural. The question is whether it's contamination from one of NASA's rovers, or maybe it tells us about a piece of technological equipment that exists on Mars that has nothing to do with humans. So I would put a high priority of going back to that place. Currently, Curiosity is 8 kilometers away from that location. They can easily go back within a couple of weeks. I mean, even if they move at the highest speed of the rover, they can get back there within a couple of days. But I say let's move more slowly because of the terrain, maybe a couple of weeks. And then, that would be an item of great interest to the public because this cylinder is very puzzling. So why not give it a high priority?
Well, let's see what happens from here. The White House has already registered the domain aliens.gov, and they said stay tuned just the other day. So curiosity is out there for sure. We always learn something new, though, whenever you're here, Professor Loeb. So thank you for coming back.
Thank you. And Curiosity is the name of the rover. And I'm definitely tuned as advised by the White House. So they don't need to worry about me being tuned.
I didn't question that. Not at all. Not at all. All right. You take care. We'll be calling back on you soon, I'm sure.
Thank you.
Okay, everybody, it's 1:50. Give us a quick 2 minutes, and then we're going to talk about some prices, actually, that might go out of this world for 2 pieces tied directly to Chicago sports history that are going up for auction. Okay, everybody, it's 1:52 right now, and if there is a city with a ton of sports history tied to it, we're sitting in it right now. I mean, Chicago is just full of it. And so there are two pieces that are going up on an auction now with Heritage Auctions that have really, I mean, these are massive, just the names tied to them. Michael Jordan. You know, you already know the price is going to go up. Shoeless Joe Jackson. I mean, the history there behind these two. Let's go ahead and bring in Heritage Auctions Director of Production, Mike Provenzali. Thank you so much for being here.
For having me. Very excited.
All right. So, I mean, there are a number of things that could be tied to either one of these sports heroes, but can you tell us exactly what you have?
Yeah, so let's start with the Shoeless Joe Jackson. I actually have it right here with me. This is a 1910 Old Mill Shoeless Joe Jackson card. So what's interesting about this is it was his final year in the minor leagues. He was playing for the New Orleans Pelicans. So Chicago was in his future, but where he would truly become a star. But it's one of the rarest cards in card collecting. Only 17 of these are known, and Shoeless Joe material is very coveted by collectors. He's kind of the most infamous of the legends of baseball history because of the 1919 Black Sox scandal. But exciting news over the summer that he might have a chance to get into the Baseball Hall of Fame soon. So in the collecting community, there's a lot of excitement around what's going to happen there, how that will affect his material. But his cards always bring a premium because of the rarity and the story behind him.
Yeah, and let's say someone isn't a Sox fan or isn't really a student of history. Go back into that time period and the controversy for that specific time period with the Sox.
Yeah, so the Sox were one of the best teams in the league and had been for many years. Their owner was frugal, we'll say. So the players were receiving less than they thought. They made it to the World Series, and they were allegedly convinced to throw the World Series. And after the World Series, they lost. And all the players were blackballed from the league. And Joe Jackson, who's one of the greatest players to ever play baseball, was blackballed from the Hall of Fame, where he certainly would be already, if not for that incident. It's a really rich story. There's been many books and even movies made about it. The note that I always like about it is that the tip-off that the players were in on the fix, the first pitch of game one, the pitcher, Eddie Seacott, was supposed to bean the batter, and that did happen. So it's just one of the most interesting stories in baseball history, and one of the saddest for Shoeless Joe. You know, he was an illiterate farm boy from South Carolina, and he had this God-given skill to play baseball. He actually had a tremendous World Series in 1919, so a lot of people think he was not involved in the fix, but the commissioner didn't care and knocked them all out of the league.
I mean, so much history there, and I'm sure we could talk a lot more about that because there are a lot of other things that weigh on that as well. But let's go into the price. Where are we sitting for this particular item thus far? Where do you expect it to go?
Right now, it's at $200,000. $400,000. We expect it to sell for over $800,000. It's up for bidding at ha.com right now, and it closes next weekend, so plenty of time. As anyone who participates in auctions know, a lot of the action happens in the last few days and the last few hours. So next weekend, we're expecting to see a lot of fireworks. Especially given the rarity. When you're under 20 known for a premium card like this, that really brings out the high-end collectors and those who are looking for something very specific. And for something like this, in the past 5 or 6 years, our industry has really grown, and that's because new people have come into the sports collecting industry, or people have come back into it. Maybe they did it as a kid and let it go, and then they decided to come back. So we've got a lot of new blood, and those people are really looking for premium items. And as you said at the top, Chicago is such a great sports city and has so many legends, and also some very moneyed individuals and savvy investors. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if this ended up in a collection in Chicago.
Yeah, and it wouldn't surprise me if it went over 800,000 for sure. And let's move on. You know, when we talk about things that are probably going to go for quite a price, the next item is kind of a twofer with Hall of Famers, Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant.
Yeah, so this is a 2000 Upper Deck Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan. It's called a jersey combo autograph. And what they have done here is they've taken a swatch of the jersey from each player, purple for Kobe, red for Jordan. So it's a piece of the jersey they wore in the game. They both signed it, and they only made 10 of these.
Wow.
So this is where the rarity comes into play. In the 80s and 90s, the card companies really overproduced the cards, and at that point everyone thought cards were going to be valuable, so there was way more made. Everybody held on to them. You know, famously in the 50s and 60s, card collectors or kids would put them in their bike spokes or put them in their pockets or play games with them. In the 80s and 90s, nobody did that, so you had overproduction and everyone holding on to them, so there wasn't the rarity that was needed for value. And so this is what we call the manufactured rarity, that they would just make a limited supply of these cards and then randomly insert them into packs. So it's kind of like the lottery, and that really helped the problem and brought the industry back up. And in the last 6 to 7 years, these modern cards have exploded in value, particularly when you're combining Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant, two legendary players, but both very closely tied together. Their games were very similar, not just their skills, but their intensity. And so collectors covet anything with the two of them on it. In fact, in August, we sold the Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan dual logo man 1-of-1 card for $12.9 million, which is the record price for a sports card.
Oh my goodness. And I don't know if it's a morbid question to ask, but do you typically see that the price for items for an athlete who is deceased, meaning we're not going to get any more new things from this person, typically go higher?
Definitely a factor with Kobe Bryant. Of course, he was incredibly popular when he was alive. And in this modern industry, people always expect, okay, well, after this guy retires, there's going to be more cards made of him. There's going to be more autographs out there. And his death was just so sudden and young and surprising. It really shook up the card collecting industry and added an extra premium to Kobe material. One, because, you know, it really affected people, especially fans of his, and kind of made him more endearing to them. In fact, you could say there was a lot of people before Kobe passed that maybe didn't like him as much, and then after his passing, a lot of those people might have even become fans as well.
Sure.
And then the rarity factor again, that, you know, you expected Kobe Bryant to have decades and decades of more material post-career, but that just isn't going to happen. So what we do have is very limited, and he's top 5 player, in my opinion. So he's right there at the top. And then, you know, you saw Michael Jordan give an incredible eulogy at Kobe's ceremony, and you really saw the relationship that they had together. So they were always compared to each other, and that kind of cinched that as well. So material with the two of them together is incredibly coveted by collectors.
Wow. Okay, now how long do people have to get in on these items?
So the auction will close next weekend, April 3rd and 4th. So all you have to do is go to ha.com and you can view and bid everything there. And yes, it's fun to talk about these six-figure items, but there's plenty of great material for collectors, especially Chicago collectors and fans, in the auction, whatever level you collect at.
And there has to be some type of, I don't know, best practices or tips and tricks to make sure you get the final bid. I mean, can you share a little bit of the mentality behind it?
Well, the system we use is called extended bidding. So next Friday night, April 3rd, at 10 p.m. Central Time, the auction will start to close. A 30-minute countdown clock will start for each item. If someone bids on that item, the 30-minute clock resets. So every item stays open until it goes 30 minutes without a bid. So there's no sniping at the end. It's a good system for the consigners and the bidders to make sure everybody gets what they want. But as far as tips for buying material in auction, I always advise buy what you love, buy what you're interested in. Don't think about the money aspect. Investment has become a big part of sports collecting, but if you buy players, teams, eras that mean something to you, you're always going to be happy with the investment you've made.
I like that. I think that's a great way to end our conversation for today. Can't wait to find out what these items go for in the end.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and we can talk about the results in a couple weeks.
Okay. All right. Look forward to it. Thank you so much. Take care. Everybody, it's about 2:05. Let's get in a quick 2-minute break, and then I'll tell you what we have lined up for this hour. Okay, welcome back. We are getting to a discussion that continues really our coverage of this debate about data centers from one community to the next. I mean, we have special reports that you can find here online that will give you more context as to the pros and cons for many different areas that they're having to weigh as they make these huge decisions. And it's coming back around to Aurora now tonight. And so we have Allison Lindberg, the Director of Sustainability, who is with us again. We've spoken to you before. At one point, you all had a moratorium in your city, but tell us where you all are in this ongoing discussion now.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks for having me back. So the moratorium we put in place on September 25th was for 180 days, and it actually officially expired last night, but we had the option to continue it for 30 days if needed while we were trying to determine new requirements for data centers. So we have opted to do that because City Council is going to be hopefully voting on those new recommendations tonight.
Aha, okay, and the new recommendations, let's go over those.
Sure. So basically we have 4 big recommendations or requirements that we're going to be recommending that council pass tonight. The first one is that we did not have a definition for data centers at all. So all of our data centers were being treated as warehouses. So we will be putting a definition for data centers in our zoning ordinance, and it will be conditional use. So that means that the public will have a chance to weigh in, and City Council will ultimately have to approve any new data center under this ordinance. The second one is that we will be requiring data centers to either bring in renewable energy or to bring in battery storage. So this is part of our renewable or resiliency for the grid portion of our requirements. Third, we have limits and performance standards on a number of things that our citizens have concerns about. And those are noise, energy, water consumption, and vibrations. And then last but not least, all data centers, whether they already exist or are coming into Aurora, will have to provide transparency in their operations. So we will be requiring reporting on energy consumption, water use, and noise on an annual basis for all data centers. We will also be requiring proof of compliance with the Biometric Information Protection Act, or BIPA, which protects our biometric data in the state of Illinois.
And who would be the governing body in terms of like enforcement on these things?
It would be our city, so we would be enforcing all of these local requirements.
Who would you have, like an inspector go out and check these things out, or how does that work?
Yeah, so some of these will happen during the zoning and the permitting process. So at the time of application, we will be requiring a water study, an energy study. We will be requiring modeling for noise. And then after they are constructed, we will also be requiring proof that they've been constructed correctly. On the noise side, we will also be requiring an operational noise study to prove that they've actually met those noise requirements. And then every year they will have to demonstrate to us with either software or through modeling, through a study that they have actually continued to meet those requirements over time.
And take us back a bit in the discussions there in Aurora, and refresh our memories. You all's discussion, did it surround a particular company that wanted to come there initially, or was it a part of, we are kind of going through these regulations knowing at some point we're going to have to face this?
So Aurora currently has 4 or 5 existing data centers. It depends on how you define it. And we have 5 that are either under construction or are going through the permitting process. So we have had a lot of data center interest here, and that interest actually hasn't stopped. The Chicagoland area is one of the largest places for data centers currently in the United States. It's in like the top 5. So we wanted to make sure that these high impact buildings and this high impact industry isn't going to have negative impacts on our communities. And we did have a few concerns specifically around some specific data centers already in operation in Aurora. But I think that this is part of a larger conversation. Aurora is not alone. We've talked with a lot of jurisdictions that are also considering regulations or are just trying to grapple with the potential negative long-term impacts of data center development.
Mm-hmm, yeah, and let's stay in that vein there, because we were on our side of things thinking the same thing, that man, that really almost all communities are having to have these discussions. You're the first director of sustainability that I've heard weigh in on this. And again, we've had you on the show before. When you were having conversations with other municipalities, did they have a director of sustainability weighing on these types of issues of energy consumption and renewable energy, things like that would fall strictly under your purview?
I'm not sure that all of the municipalities had a director of sustainability that was interested or concerned about these issues, but some of them do. And I think that generally, though, even if a municipality isn't lucky enough to actually have a sustainability department, they do understand the importance of water consumption and electricity consumption and what that can do to their residents. So yes, the answer is I talked to some sustainability people in some jurisdictions, and in others I was talking to other people just employed at the city.
Do you feel, though, that having your voice in the midst of this discussion helped ease some fears for residents there in the community?
I will say I've been pleasantly surprised that sustainability has been at the forefront of these conversations. Usually sustainability might be something that is not prioritized, but I think a lot of citizens are now starting to really see the potential concerns that we're having here in the state of Illinois, specifically on water consumption, and they're understanding that water is a finite resource, especially clean water. And so that, I think, really did help, having somebody there that was dedicated to talk about water and to talk about how that relates to sustainability. I also heard a lot of people concerned about air quality. A lot of these data centers use diesel generators, and they've been concerned about emissions and what that does to their health, people that have asthma or are immunocompromised. So I think the sustainability director could be the person that's also looking out for air quality and other types of emissions. So yes, I think it definitely helped to have somebody that was focused on those aspects specifically when we were talking about these regulations.
And so with the vote tonight, where do you all go from here? Let's say the vote is moving this forward, because it does seem like you all have paused multiple times in order to try to kind of safeguard a lot of things. So let's say people feel like you've done enough, you've put enough parameters in place to move forward. If the city is moving forward, what would people expect to see or to experience in the next several months?
So if the vote goes forward tonight, then we will pick a date for all of these requirements to officially go into place. I'm assuming something like April 1st. We don't know that yet. Council will decide tonight. Once those go into effect and they have a start date, then the moratorium will be lifted, and all of these requirements will now be required. There are some dates for the operational transparency that are already set forth in the ordinance. So on an annual basis, people can expect to see that these transparent operations, the energy consumption, water consumption, and noise levels will be posted on a city website for everyone to see. And then new data centers coming in, they will now know exactly what our requirements are. And citizens can expect to see some potential data centers coming in. There will be public hearings about them. There will be chances for the public to weigh in when they go before council, and then they'll probably see whether or not city council decides to approve them. And if they do get approved, then we'll have some data centers that will be the quietest, the most efficient, and the most water responsible data centers in the country.
And when you speak of new data centers, how does that flesh with the governor's moratorium? So you all had a moratorium for Aurora specifically, and then the governor put in a moratorium for the state. So how does that work?
So my understanding is that the moratorium the government put in place was specifically about some of the incentives that the state was offering for new data centers. So it wasn't necessarily a moratorium on data center development in Illinois. It was just a moratorium on those specific incentives. So it really doesn't impact us at all, in the sense that our moratorium was specifically about allowing new data centers to come in to Aurora, and once it's lifted, as long as they meet our requirements, they can start applying and going through that permitting process.
Yeah, I would wonder if they would still be choosing Illinois without the incentives.
Oh, sure. So, my understanding is that the incentives that are offered by the state are for for really large data centers, like the hyperscale ones, and that in Aurora that may not specifically apply here. We have some data centers that don't fall under that technical description of a hyperscale. So we still may see some data center development, even if that moratorium and those incentives go away.
Understood. And when we speak of, like, say, criticisms of these data centers, a lot of times we speak very specifically about, like, residents. Do you hear any type of backlash from businesses about these, like businesses in Aurora?
I guess it depends on what businesses you're talking about. Labor does have some concerns because they would like to have the construction jobs that are related to data centers. And I think that's probably the biggest one. And, they can still come here just as long as they are meeting the requirements that we have. So it shouldn't be a problem. Their jobs should still be able to come here as long as the data centers coming here agree to be good neighbors.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll definitely want an update on how the vote goes tonight. Thank you so much for your time yet again, and kind of getting us up to speed on where things have gone in this. And now we just have to look to see where it goes from here. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. Everybody, it's about 2:20. Here are a few other things that we have for this hour. We have quite a discussion to come around 2:45, so sit still for that. We almost every day have some type of reference to AI, right? And I think I heard something over the weekend where someone said you can't untie the promise AI from the peril of AI. And that discussion at 2:45 is going to show you how far things have come and make you question where we're going with AI. Sit still on that one. 2:45, okay? Also, we're going to have around 2:30, we're going to be talking about a coalition of parents and supporters from a local Catholic school that are doing what they can to keep it around for many years to come. Coming up after this quick break, though, we're going to get into one of our annual conversations, which is bird migration and how to make sure that the birds are safe when they're passing through Chicago. We'll be right back in 2 minutes. All right, welcome back, everyone. 2:23 right now. And Chicago had a first in the nation program, has a first in the nation program called Chicago Lights Out. And in case you don't know what that's all about, it's about saving birds' lives, especially during migration season, which we apparently are in the midst of. Even though it's been cold outside and migration season kind of makes you think of spring, and we're not really feeling like spring, apparently we're in the midst of migration season already. Annette Prince, who is the director of the Chicago Bird Collision Monitors and the chair for Bird Friendly Chicago, is joining me now. Thank you so much for your time.
Hi, nice to be here.
You know, can you give me a reaction first and foremost to maybe the unanimous confusion on bird migration season when it comes to Chicago? When does it actually start?
Well, some birds are migrating all the time. I mean, there's always a bird traveling somewhere, but these birds have hundreds and thousands of miles to travel, so they get going pretty early. We already have had birds even from the beginning of March showing up in the Chicago region, and some birds come earlier because their food source is here. Other birds have to wait, like little things like hummingbirds and insect-eating birds have to wait until the weather changes, but birds are trying to get to their breeding grounds as fast as possible, and the sooner they get there, the better chance they have to have successful breeding and establish territory. So it is true that the early bird gets the worm, and that's why birds are already moving through Chicago.
Oh my goodness, I love it. I love learning something new. So tell us about how Lights Out helps them in this passage.
A lot of people don't realize that the majority of birds migrate between their southern wintering grounds up to their northern breeding grounds at night. And they're traveling usually in thousands of years before we were here over a darkened landscape below them, and they navigate by the stars and other celestial markers. And we've since then lit up the earth beneath them, and when they're traveling at night, they get confusing light patterns below them. In our urban areas, particularly Chicago is ranked as the city with the most light, posing the most threat to the most birds, because we're such a central travel area for birds. Our migratory path brings millions of birds every year through the Chicago area, and by having a lit urban area, birds can be distracted and attracted and pulled away from just flying north to being pulled down near buildings where they can get harmed by exhaustion, by flying into glass and hurting themselves. Otherwise, they would be just traveling freely along the lakefront and moving safely north.
Because we are central, yes, but we're also a hub for tall buildings.
Yes, Chicago has spectacular architecture, but it has a spectacular bird migration every spring and fall. We get hundreds of different birds travel through our area, and these are birds that don't live here, but they're just visitors, and we're trying to give them safe passages. They're living their winter down in southern areas of the United States and South America, Central America, and they are traveling up to the northern United States and Canada for the summer. And we are right in the middle of that route, and are very fortunate to be able to witness hundreds of different beautiful birds that are just using this as a place to rest and travel through every year.
Oh, and so you all kind of advocate for a Lights Out during the spring and also the fall?
Yeah, in the spring, birds are coming from the south to get up north to their breeding areas. And after that, all the parents and young birds are moving south for a place where they can find food in the winter in the southern United States or central South America. And the primary time that lights should be out would be anything after 11 p.m. Certainly the darker the better, but the time when these birds are passing through our city and could be distracted or pulled towards dangerous buildings and glass where they are ultimately harmed is that time from 11 p.m. until daylight the next morning. And that's when we want as much possible lighting, particularly any light that pours up into the sky that acts as almost a beacon to pull birds away from their flying at night on their travels through our city. So it's fall and spring migration that we have here.
And I'm seeing this is particularly for buildings 40 or more stories. And to buildings of 20 or more stories that are isolated from other buildings. Is that right?
Yeah, those are the type of buildings that we're concerned about their top or decorative lighting, because a building that tall or a building that isolated is sending up almost a beacon of light. If they're along the lakefront, they're shining light onto the darkened lake where birds are traveling, which attracts them. If it's a particularly tall building, a bright logo, decoration, antenna lights, any of those things can be something that isn't very useful lighting for us to use, but it's more for decoration. So that makes it non-essential, but something that's going to attract birds more. Anything that's lower than that, we have light that kind of all blends together, but we do want even lower story buildings to reduce as much light as possible, because after these birds fly all night long, if they happen to be near Chicago at daybreak, they want to settle someplace for the day. And as they come into the city, if it's dark and your lobby lights are turned on, and you have trees and fountains inside your building, birds will be trying to get towards what looks like a nice safe sanctuary, not realizing there's glass between them and the attractive trees or other landscaping that might be inside of a building. So as much light reduction for all buildings, and particularly buildings that have their top display lights pouring up into the sky, we want that reduced so that there's the maximum amount of reduction of attraction for birds flying in the night sky.
Yeah, I remember a few years ago, was it McCormick Place that added in some extra like shading so that, I mean, what you were talking about when the birds can kind of see inside and don't realize it's glass, was it McCormick Place?
Yep, McCormick Place has the situation where they are facing the lakefront. Their lakefront building is facing the lake, and where birds are traveling. And if they do not either turn their lights out or pull shades or drapes to block the light, they were acting like a lighthouse that was just drawing birds in. That was variable as to whether they had their lights on and off. They were not completely participating every night of migration. And on a heavy night in October in 2023, they left their lights on, and it happened to be a night where millions of birds were traveling through the city, and pulled over 1,000 of them there and killed 1,000 birds in one morning. So they didn't change their lighting as much as they added markers to their glass, because glass is ultimately the most dangerous area for bird injury and death. And so they added markers onto their glass such that even if they have their lighting on, they still have protection, because birds are able to see that there's a surface there to avoid. Otherwise, clear reflective glass is very confusing to birds. It either looks like the reflection of a tree in the sky, or it looks like an open space they can fly through. So we are currently trying to get the city to protect more and more glass in new construction and renovations, because if we can put markers or any kind of visual element on glass, we can prevent the kinds of massive injury and death that every year we pick up more than 8,000 birds a year just in 1 square mile of downtown.
Oh my goodness. And what area is that when you say 1 square mile?
It's the central area of downtown that our group is able to monitor. We know that it happens all along the lakefront, so that when we say we find 8,000 birds, we know that, first of all, they say you only find 1/10 of what's out there. So because there's birds that fall on rooftops and awnings and places we can't recover them from. So we find 8,000 birds, and we know that buildings, high-rise and low-rise buildings, residential buildings all along the lakefront and throughout Cook County, if a bird encounters that area and is confused, because what I didn't mention before is that these little birds spend most of their time in rainforests in the wintertime, and they spend their time up in forests in Canada. So they're encountering buildings and glass just a couple times in a year in their lives, and they don't have the kind of adaptations that some local birds can avoid glass, because they've always lived around buildings their whole lives. But these little birds it's very foreign to them to see the buildings that we have. So, we know that those birds are confused, and they're not really going to learn, and are in great peril when they come through an urban area like Chicago.
And what you mentioned, kind of advocating with the city and some of these businesses, what has been the response been from the city or any business owners that you've approached with this?
We've had some businesses and residential members of the public who are wanting to do something about their school, their workplace, their home, so that birds will be safer. We are trying to introduce an ordinance in the building code that, just the way to protect people, we have an ordinance that requires buildings to be handicap accessible. We think that new buildings could be made bird safe. And so far, we've worked on this for almost 10 years. We have not gotten this as a requirement. It was just presented to City Council last week and again tabled as far as something that could go into effect. But we very much believe that Chicago, standing as perhaps the worst city in the United States for birds, by virtue of the amount of lighting and glass and the sheer number of birds that come this way, should be a city that takes the lead in saying we can make sure that new buildings at least are safe, and then we can work on existing buildings to make them safer. And it doesn't take much cost or much additional change to do it, but we are still kind of receiving a lot of opposition to putting that kind of building requirement into the city. And other cities like New York have done it, and Portland and San Francisco and Toronto, even Evanston and Skokie have requirements that new buildings have to have the things that will make the difference whether something lives or dies. It's not just a kind of whimsical ordinance. It is something that will save tens of thousands of lives. The way we know that the Lights Out program, just by people turning lights out, is saving tens of thousands of birds. We could make even more progress with that if we can get an ordinance that says that the glass that people use needs to be in such a type of protection or design that birds can come through our area, we can enjoy them, and they'll still remain safe and able to continue on their astounding voyages of hundreds or thousands of miles.
Wow, all very interesting things for sure. And so the migration period for the spring, we started around March 15th, and when does that end?
We go until about June 15th, and then fall migration is from August 15th to November 15th.
Okay. All right, everybody. Let's be conscious stewards, especially if you live up in a high rise. Let's be conscious stewards and make sure our birds that are out there make it to where they're going. Thank you so much for joining us today to talk to us a little bit about the Lights Out program and where we are on the year when it comes to these birds, so many of them migrating through our area.
Exactly. We're very fortunate in Chicago to host these birds, and we just want to give them safe passages. It's an important thing for us, and it's an important thing for the world, because these birds are part of a whole global environmental network that we all rely on for everything from just enjoying these birds to climate and food and all the different aspects of a healthy world that we rely on. And so we want to protect these birds as well as make it a better place for all of us.
Well, you take care. Thank you so much for what you do.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. 2:36, everyone. Give us 2 minutes, and then we're going to talk about an effort to save a local school. All right, welcome back, everyone. Right now, it is just about 2:40, and we're checking to see if we're going to be able to talk with a family from St. Hubert's, or one of the representatives from St. Hubert's, who is with the families fighting to make sure that this school is around. They have formally submitted a petition to the Pope. Went straight to the Pope to try to keep this school relevant for many years to come. Jillian Bernis Garcia is joining me now. I know you're miles and miles away, but let's see if we can make this work. Are you there? Can you hear me?
We lost her.
Oh. Well, we tried. Hopefully we'll get her back. We had her on the line, but we couldn't see her at the moment when we were coming back out of the break. But let me just give you a little background on their appeal, okay? Because it's quite unique. They've actually gone around Cardinal Cupich here in our area, as they feel like they are in an extreme fight to save this school. So this coalition of parents and their supporters from St. Hubert Catholic School, as I mentioned, they've submitted this petition to the Vatican, appealing directly to the Pope to reverse the Archdiocese of Chicago's decision to close the 65-year-old school at the end of the current academic year. You know, we have heard from parents and supporters from many different schools over the course of the last several months who have been fighting to keep their schools around, some successfully, some not so much. You know, we spoke with parents from Shy Arts, you know, about the significance of this particular school and this community, and how they want to keep it exactly as it is. It will still be around essentially, but not in the same format, because it will kind of be looped in a little bit more with other schools in the district moving forward. We've spoken to families from Acero. Their schools will not be around moving forward. So there are several different fights out there for parents who become invested in these schools, right? Especially if it's not your kid's first year. You know, the longer you've been in a particular school system or a school community, that becomes your family. You know the inner workings of it. You know the hierarchy of it. You kind of have an idea of like the moves you'd like your child to make within it. And when that kind of gets changed without your full input or without your full blessing, then it can be a very traumatic, if you will, situation. And that's definitely one of the words that has been used in some of these situations, especially if the kids maybe have to travel now to go to a different school. So you're kind of taking them even out of not just the school community that they're in, but it could be out of your community. So there are many different levels to this. Their appeal documents what they believe are alleged leadership shortcomings. A failure to pursue available grants that could have generated up to $400,000 in preschool tuition assistance. They detail insufficient parish level fundraising efforts, again, that could have helped to keep it going. They say there was a transfer of over $500,000 from school funds to other parish uses. Ouch. And they also say that this decision to remove tuition discounts for lower income families has resulted in where they are as well. So removing those discounts, then maybe there are fewer students that even have this as a possibility to go to this school for the full amount. Obviously when you are offering up tuition discounts, you may be able to get more students, more families who can make it work for their budgets, make it work for their households. But without it, it just can't happen. So they have really been working on this appeal, and again, taking it now from the city level, the state level, all the way up to the Vatican at this point in time. And they have some credible complaints here, and they have a lot of people who are standing behind them in this fight, again, to save St. Hubert Catholic School. But we were hoping that we were going to be able to check in with Jillian so that we could get a few more details as to where they are in the fight, what happens from here. But she's in another country right now, so it looks like we lost that connection. But we'll continue to stay on top of it, and we'll circle back if we get more concrete information about that, or maybe there's another time or day that we can actually bring them into the discussion here on Chicago Live. But it is 2:44, so let's go ahead and take a quick break. Give us 2 minutes and we'll be back. All right, welcome back, everyone. About 2:50 right now, and there's so many questions about where we are, where it pertains to AI, and definitely where we're going, right? Because it's so hard as the years go by, as the months go by, to decipher what is real and what's not, and what regulations should be put on all of this, and what's overboard. There are extensive debates when it comes to AI, and it really goes into almost every industry that you can think of. And so let's talk a little bit about an image that was generated not too long ago of a U.S. Army soldier living out an extraordinary life of service among the America First agenda. Okay. And this person was seen on warships, seen giving speeches, seen in many different places, and even met with the president, at least in the pictures. And it all appears to be, you guessed it, AI. So I want to bring in Professor Ben Zhao from Chicago, who is a Neubauer Professor of Computer Science, to talk a little bit more about Jessica Foster. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here, and thanks for having me.
All right. Had you heard of Jessica Foster before this conversation?
I had not. I read the Washington Post article. That was quite interesting. There's a lot of content that goes back, and so yeah, for sure. It's not a terribly surprising manifestation of all the things that AI does right now. But it is interesting to see it make more inroads into sort of political conversations and presumably election campaigns.
Yeah, interesting and maybe just flat out scary, especially when it comes to politics and world issues.
Yeah, I mean, this is where we're at, right? I think all these things, all these issues that we knew about these models, we've known for quite a while. Detecting these things is going to be difficult. Watermarking doesn't work because if one company watermarks their content, others will not, and the folks who want to stay undetected will simply choose models that don't have watermarks. And so, yeah, we're at the stage where, for sure, AI-generated content looks, increasingly real. I will say, just from the images that I've seen from some of the articles out there, these are still fairly rudimentary images. They're still pretty easy to detect with the human eye. Just looking at it, you can tell it's very glossy. It's very much a stereotypical sort of AI, female image. And so there's a lot of telltale signs, inconsistencies, errors, things that once you start studying it, are really easy giveaways. The problem is in many of these contexts, whether it's politics or elections or larger scale information campaigns, people don't care. And the psychology will override to where they're not looking for these kind of smaller things. They're not looking to identify whether it's real or not. And, the campaign achieves its ends because people will jump on the reaction first, and they'll assume it's real.
You really start to wonder where this could go. I mean, we already had, even in the last election cycle for the primaries that were just 2 weeks ago here in our area, a controversy surrounding AI and the AI usage of a voice. But this is a whole person, 1 million followers that didn't know they're not following a real person.
I mean, this is 2026, right? And so you have to take everything with a little bit of grain of salt. I would look at that 1 million followers and say, how many of those are real accounts? Fake accounts on social media is another thing that we've known for, more than a decade now. And so, it's falsehood building on falsehood. And so, yeah, and this is not the only occurrence, right? So there are, for example, there's this entirely AI made up actress that has been making the rounds in some of the entertainment industry circles, and people, people weren't terribly fooled. I think people recognize that was AI, but yeah, I think moving forward, you're going to see a lot of these attempts to mimic real things and use AI synthetic stuff to try to fool people. There are fake books out there. There was a recent story about a publishing firm, publishing house literally retracting and canceling the release of a book because people realized that much of the book, if not the entirety, was written by LLMs. And so, yeah, I think moving forward, we're going to have increasing number of this in every modality and context imaginable. And people are really going to realize, if they haven't already, that the world that we believe to be real has to be questioned. Critical thinking and questioning everything that we see and hear has to be a daily part of our lives. And we have to somehow, try to authenticate ourselves as human now, rather than just assume that everything we see happens to be real and human made.
Yeah, that is so, I don't know, a big part of this is like, where are we that there are instances where people fully know it's AI and yet still want to follow it, or still want to, play a part in making it an even bigger thing, knowing full well that it's AI.
Right. And some of this is philosophy, and some of this is psychology, and some of this, I would say a lot of it is marketing. We humans already have a tendency to anthropomorphize content, right? So we, folks remember the Castaway movie, Tom Hanks on an island, and you got nothing except a volleyball, which is, and a bloodstained handprint on it. But he's going to make it his best friend because that's his sort of survival instinct, right? You have to have some sort of social interaction. And so, yeah, a lot of this comes from societal needs and human needs, and people who lack social contact for whatever reason and need more of it may well interact with chatbots as their substitute. And obviously there's going to be consequences of that. And so when they reach out and they see AI constructs, there are a number of people will want to engage, because to many people, some of these constructs will be preferable to humans, because they're easier to interact with, there are less hurt feelings on the other side, there's less social norms, you can do whatever you want. So in some sense, this inferior construct that you don't have to worry about interacting nicely with has its own sort of attractive traits as far as social interactions go.
Yeah, and then on the flip side of that, we've already seen a lot of cases where young people have felt pressure to do bad things or self-harm even as a result of AI.
It's a very tricky thing, right? Human psychology is, we're very malleable things. We are still, prone to the biological imperative. When we deal with environmental inputs, we react. And so, young people who don't necessarily have any mental issues can be led down a spiral. There's now a term for it, right? AI psychosis, where they interact with chatbots and they're told that, maybe they are living in a simulation. Maybe the world is not real. Maybe the only way to break out of it is to take a cue from the Matrix movies and see if you can jump off a building and fly. And unfortunately, this is the real world as far as we can tell. And when you jump off a building, there are consequences. There are other examples we know of where young people have actually killed people. In at least one case, a young man killed his parents because he believed that they were holding him back from, meeting his AI girlfriend. There was another instance, I think, more recently, where a young man almost committed an act of mass terrorism because he was convinced that was the way to get closer to his AI relationship partner. And then he ended up, of course, harming himself. And so, yeah, there's a lot of these scenarios where people who are the most vulnerable tend to be the ones who are paying the price for the lack of accountability and the lack of safety guardrails on some of these tools. Even as companies continue to try to push and market these tools to as many people as possible, because profits and revenue and demands on cost.
Yeah, and so maybe on a final note here, you talked about questioning everything, which I think is so important, especially right now. But are there some other ways to, to protect the youngest of us, and even for adults to spot these AI figures out there?
It's very difficult, right? I think, when it comes to public information campaigns on social media, in the news media, I think we have to rely on authentication. You have to trust the venue and the delivery mechanism that you're getting this information, right? Trusted mainstream news outlets, journalists, who have integrity and sort of a history. These are things that I think are more valuable than ever. But I think it's even more important to protect sort of more private communication. I know that in the last couple of years, there's been a skyrocketing of phishing scams targeting the elderly, for example, where it used to be like a fake email from, a grandchild saying, oh, I'm, kidnapped, I'm south of the border, please send money to this Western Union address. But now, increasingly, these scams come with real photos that look, they're not real photos, but they look realistic of their loved one being held at gunpoint or some other crazy mess. So those are kind of the things that perhaps can do more personal damage. And there are ways around that. For example, having a safe word to authenticate you or your loved one in terms of stress, in times of stress, that is not publicized and that is not, open to anyone else to learn. And so under times of duress, if a loved one is in real trouble, they need to tell you their secret word so that you can actually know that it's them, right? It's not just based on what you can see or hear anymore. Those things are insufficient. We have to rely on other mechanisms like knowledge and pre-built communication patterns and protocols to try to just stay sane and understand what is real and what is not.
Professor,
crazy world.
It is a crazy world for sure. We certainly thank you for helping us to make a bit of sense out of it and help us to steer away from it. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Crazy stuff, everybody. Crazy stuff out there for sure. Let's take a 2-minute break, and then we're going to get into a few things. We're still working to get our interview with Jillian from St. Hubert's back, and we think we have her, so we're going to try to bring her back after the break. And then I'll also talk to you about some of the things coming up in our final hour of Chicago Live after this 2-minute break. Welcome back, everyone. It's 3:05 right now, and we do have Jillian Bernis Garcia, who is a part of the group really championing this fight for St. Hubert Catholic School, joining me now. Thank you so much for making a way to get here on the show. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much. You caught me on spring break visiting family internationally, so I really appreciate you offering me this opportunity to.
No problem at all. Tell me a little bit about the background here on what's going on with St. Hubert's. I think we lost her again. Okay, is she, Jillian, are you there now?
I'm here.
Okay, all right. Give us a little background.
I am.
Give us a little background on St. Hubert's and what's going on.
So St. Hubert Catholic School is the only Catholic school in the largest elementary school district in the state of Illinois. We're in Hoffman Estates, Illinois. We're a home to quite a few families who want to see their children formed in the faith, the Catholic faith that is. And so they're drawn to St. Hubert Catholic School for its wonderful community, sense of community, for its facilities, for the ability to worship and pray together during the school day. And so we're working to make sure our school is around for many years to come.
Mm-hmm. And what is the challenging aspect to it being around for many years to come?
So right now, we have heard from the Archdiocese of Chicago that the pastor and our finance committee made the decision to close our school at the end of the school year, and that the Archdiocese of Chicago and Cardinal Cupich have approved the closure as well. And so we originally had petitioned Cardinal Cupich to overturn that decision. We think that it's a very viable community. We had a certified fraud examiner and forensic auditor take a look at the financials, and shows that we can operate for 5 more years, or with a modest 10% decrease in cost, or if parish administration would welcome the revenue generating ideas that parents offered, we would be cash flow positive in 2 years. So we feel like we're a viable school, but we do know that the Archdiocese of Chicago, headed by Betsy Boland, the Director of Operations, have been on a path to close many Catholic schools in the area.
And what did you find out about that? You know, I mean, if it's not just St. Hubert's, why are they looking at several different schools? And even for St. Hubert's, did they solely base their decision upon the finances?
So last year, we were on a path towards recovery. So we had improved our deficit, brought it down from $500,000 deficit to $140,000 deficit. We had increased our enrollment to about 220 students. So we were on a path to increasing those numbers and decreasing the deficit. However, then different decisions were made without consulting the school board, without asking if this is a good idea, to eliminate tuition discounts for hardworking families, to, despite raising tuition, eliminate some programs that were promised to parents, further eroding the enrollment. And so it just seemed like there was an extra effort to make sure that our school was pushed into a closure narrative where we were showing low numbers in enrollment and high deficits, despite us having been successful last year. And so that was from policy decisions made at parish administration level, directed by the Archdiocese of Chicago. People have told us, Archdiocese, which is really disappointing to us. We think that with especially a growth in young people joining the church, that they're going to want to have a place to raise their children and form them in the faith. And so they should be keeping schools open and trying to revitalize them instead of closing them.
And so you all have taken this fight to the Vatican. Tell me about how many names are on the petition and what you expect the Vatican can do or will do when you kind of go around the cardinal for this area.
So we originally took our petition to Cardinal Cupich. They did not reverse the decision. They rejected to reverse the decision. So that was kind of like the first step in bringing it to the Dicastery of Culture and Education at the Vatican. We had to bring it forth first to the local authority before we could bring it to the Vatican. So now we're calling on the Vatican to take a look at our situation. We think that it's completely reversible, it's completely manageable. We're asking Pope Leo if he would look at our case through his Dicastery of Culture and Education, knowing that he has experience in the Archdiocese of Chicago, having been raised and formed in the faith himself here in Chicago Catholic schools, and that they'll take a close look at our situation and see that it is a very important Catholic school for our community and area, and it serves a large population, and all it needs is to be revitalized and for there to be a really good emphasis on a good decision making, good financial management, and bringing parents into the conversation to educate their children as well.
And let me also ask you this. I mean, are you thinking, let's say the decisions that you all have proposed will keep it from ending up in this very same situation within the next 5 to 10 years?
We were on a pathway to increasing the enrollment and decreasing the deficit until there were administrative decisions made that were unfortunate. I don't think they had to be made. Our school board is given no operational and administrative authority to act, and so often there are really good ideas that the parents have. We had cheerleading camps lined up. We had sports camps lined up. We had grant opportunities. We had a committee wanting to do bingo. These would have all resulted in over 6 figures in increased revenue. And so when you kind of aren't cooperating with the parents and collaborating, I think there's opportunities that are lost. And so we're asking for the opportunity to continue supporting our school, finding ways to make sure that we're generating more revenue, having a parish administration that works with us. And we are open to a conversation with the Dicastery of Culture and Education about how that can happen, or with the Archdiocese of Chicago if they are interested in forming like a revitalization team for Catholic schools instead of dismantling them.
Let me ask you, maybe on a final note, how a fight like this affects not your faith, but your overall experience with the church right now.
So it's been difficult, but you know what? There are people, and people are fallible, and so our family believes that we have our center is in God and Jesus Christ, and the importance of our faith in our everyday lives, and we want to make sure our children experience that just not on the weekends, but every single day. And so we still hold true to those principles, to making sure that our we're raising our kids to prepare for the future of a kingdom maybe beyond this mortal world, and that we're making sure they understand that there's a God that loves them, that takes care of them. And that is so needed in today's modern day society where people are feeling really isolated and left out. To have a Catholic school that has that community that welcomes them, that kind of wraps their arms around them, shares with them their knowledge of God and their faith. And so while we understand that this decision was made and it has affected our children, and our children are very upset and distraught, we still believe that God is important in our lives, and we are not going to kind of ruin that because of maybe some decisions that mortal people made.
Absolutely. It's bigger than the one school or these decisions, for sure. Thank you so much for being here on the show, and please keep us updated on your fight for the school moving forward.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, and enjoy your spring break there. It looks beautiful.
Thank you very much.
Okay. All right, everybody. It's about 3:15, and let me just kind of set up where we're going from here with our next 45 or so minutes that we have for Chicago Live today. Before we turn you over to the 4 o'clock newscast, we are going to be talking with the mayor of Broadview, Katrina Thompson, who has been on the show before, but this time this is a big follow-up from Operation Midway Blitz. In fact, she's looking for federal reimbursement of the more than $700,000 in municipal and economic losses stemming from the operation that took place in the late summer to fall months of last year. And so we're going to be talking about her, talking to her about her fight now, and looking to Congress and what may be able to come to them as they are out quite a bit in a, let me see, the total documented community impact, $715,348.52. So we're going to talk to her a little bit about trying to get some of that money back a little later on in the hour. We're also going to be talking about rat birth control. That's another conversation that we have had here on the show before that we're circling back around to, because apparently the program, the pilot program for Bucktown and Wicker Park that we told you about before, has been pretty successful. And so now they're looking to expand it, not expand the rat families, but expand the program to have an abatement program throughout our area to keep the amount of rats, especially going into the summer months, down. So we'll talk about that. But first and foremost, we want to get to a conversation about a Jersey debate, a Jersey controversy. And this really surrounds a well-known name, especially for those who are baseball fans, okay? I want to go ahead and bring in Noah Henderson from Loyola University, the Director of Sports Management Program and a clinical instructor at Loyola University, Quinlan School of Business, to talk about Frank Thomas's jersey and this lawsuit that has resulted from some of the recent moves from the team and organization. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, of course. Happy to be here.
Okay, so a little background for those maybe who aren't Sox fans. If you don't know Frank Thomas, he is a pretty historical figure for the White Sox. Played from 1990 to 2005 with the team. But there's also another very short contract that he signed with the team, and now there is a major league debate over essentially the name and likeness being used for jersey moving forward. Talk a little bit to me about your reaction to this lawsuit.
It's an interesting one, and I think it's an interesting one simply because we're still in a little bit of a holding period where we're waiting for all the facts to come out. Frank Thomas, a legendary baseball player, big hurt, is unhappy seeing his name and number being used on some of the new City Connect jerseys that a lot of people are excited about. He alleges in the complaint that there's no contract that exists between him, Fanatics, Nike, the White Sox, that gives them the permission to use his name, his likeness in the promotional efforts or any merchandise. So that includes jerseys that have appeared on social media, jerseys that have been sold in the team store. So he's upset that he was, one, not informed of this, and also not compensated for those jerseys.
Yeah, the compensation part might hit a little harder than not knowing about it, because I guess if he got a check back from it, maybe it would be welcomed.
Yes, absolutely. And that's kind of the standard practice when it comes to licensing. Most athletes don't do these deals by themselves. Current players license their name and image, if you're a professional, through your respective players association, the MLBPA. Retired players also have their own arm, an alumni association that usually licenses their merchandise. So players aren't actually signing contracts one-to-one very commonly, but that is sort of the mechanism of how it usually happens.
And let's pull back a little bit. When I heard about this lawsuit, I'm like, didn't Frank Thomas and the White Sox just kind of have a falling out a couple months ago?
Yeah, and Mr. Thomas was very upset about some of how he was not portrayed as a part of the White Sox history. And it seems that the relationship recently between Mr. Thomas and the White Sox is a bit strained, which is sad given the history of both the team and his successes as a part of the team.
Yeah, I mean, people have said he's looking to put the big hurt on the team now. I mean, you would think that if you're going to make money off of him, you would make sure he's in a very cordial, congenial position with the team.
Yeah, cordial or not, I think that every athlete, irrespective of being on good terms or bad terms with a current or former team, is owed compensation for any sort of money that's being made off of their image. So, I would see a world where even if Frank Thomas, was still very happy with the White Sox and they were using his name and image in a way that makes money off of him, that he'd have the same right to sue that he does today and probably the same motivation to sue. I think it just hurts a little more when you're twisting a knife that's already inside.
Yeah, and let me ask you this. I mean, have the White Sox responded to any of this? Do we know? Is there a possibility like a settlement could be reached?
Yeah, absolutely. I think right now we're in a bit of a holding period. The only thing that we have is the complaint that was filed by Mr. Thomas's attorneys. So we only have the facts as Mr. Thomas sees them. We're going to have to wait for Nike, Fanatics, the White Sox, and others named in the suit to, give their side of the story. Perhaps there was a licensing agreement that was signed that maybe Mr. Thomas was unaware of, or Mr. Thomas could deny this, that the contract expands to jerseys, right? Mr. Thomas is in the MLB The Show video game, which means that in some capacity he's licensed his, name and likeness beyond his playing career. We're just going to have to see what documents exist and, if the right to sign a jersey's in them, if a contract even existed in the first place.
Yeah. What type of shadow does this hang over an organization like the White Sox at a time when we're getting ready for opening day, the beginning of a new season, and you're hoping to turn things around on the field, of course. Well, what does something like this, a lawsuit like this from one of your greats, do for an organization?
It's unfortunate. I think that, maybe back to your point of the current animosity that's between Mr. Thomas and the White Sox organization plays into this, that this couldn't have been a conversation behind closed doors, right? I think the lawsuit is more damaging than anything from a PR perspective, right? Anytime an organization, especially an organization like the White Sox that's had its fair share of struggles and definitely had a bit of fan disappointment, to now see them have a falling out with one of their historic greats, even if this case settles, even if it's shown that, a license could perhaps be in existence, the mere fact that there's this disagreement and animosity is just, another kind of upsetting moment to a lot of fans and trouble in a rocky bump in White Sox history.
Yeah, and it looks like, at least from the Tribune, in their reporting, that he's demanding $50,000 as well as the payment of all legal costs as a part of the lawsuit. $50,000 honestly sounds a little low.
From looking at that complaint, I think sometimes you have to say at a minimum of $50,000. It would be, my opinion that those costs could be significantly higher, and whether fee shifting of attorneys' fees happens or not, the likeness of Mr. Thomas is not cheap. So we'll see how much they actually demand, but it will certainly be $50,000 or more.
All right. Thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate it.
Yes, thanks for having me.
All right, you take care. Everybody,
Bye.
It's 3:24 right now. Give us 2 minutes and we'll be back to talk about rat birth control. Okay, welcome back, everyone. 3:27 right now. We're waiting on a couple of our guests to hop on the line. And while we are waiting, let's go ahead and take a look at where the stock market finished for the day. Quite a mixed picture here after we saw huge gains yesterday. I mean, we ended the day in great shape yesterday, but as you can see here, just kind of all over the place today. The S&P 500 pulling back today. Also, as you can see here, the Dow Jones Industrial Average ending the day down, almost down 85 points here, and the NASDAQ dropping 0.84% as well. A lot of this has to do with the back and forth and confusion over President Trump's comments. You know, as soon as he said yesterday that he had had some productive conversations with Iranian officials and that the war could be ending soon, the numbers just shot up, right? The numbers immediately went up. The markets were great yesterday. But soon after that, we started to hear from Iranian officials. Now, that's not to say they're the ones that he was in talks with, because he said he was in talks with Iranian officials, but there were Iranian officials who said there were no conversations, that there was no agreement, that there was no productive call about a deal made. So that just, you know, lends itself back into the growing conversation we have about uncertainty when it comes to the market. Whenever that word in particular is used, it's never a good thing. And so there was a lot of confusion as to what really is the reality of where we stand with this war. Is it nearing an end? Are we actually getting ready to boost things up? Because that's kind of how things ended the week, on the note that more troops were going to the Middle East, and thus the market was horrible on Friday, right? And so the minute there's some indication that maybe that's not happening, there was a deadline by Monday, and even though that deadline wasn't met, that there was the indication that there was a conversation in order for President Trump to delay that deadline 5 more days. So that helped the market yesterday. And then there was just the confusion over what really is going on. The Pentagon reportedly planning to deploy around 3,000 soldiers and troops. We'll say that, troops, because we don't know that they're all in the Army, but troops to the Middle East. And so there's just a lot more when there's confusion, when there's more uncertainty, you start to see this mixed picture here. And this is where the day has ended. We'll see what transpires by tomorrow. Hopefully we can get back on track. We shall see. But I did tell you that we were going to have a conversation before we got to the 4 o'clock hour with the mayor of Broadview, Katrina Thompson, who is now looking for some reimbursement for the impact of Operation Midway Blitz. And we're so glad that she's here on the show. Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. How are you?
I'm doing okay. I know that you were in Washington, D.C. recently, and tell me how you anticipate getting these funds back from the federal government.
Well, the first request is just to ask for reimbursement and share our story on what that looked like and the impact, what has happened in the village of Broadview as it relates to how we manage our budget. We don't own the federal building. We never did. The building been there for the past 30 years, but now it has increased our operations as it relates to how we look at transport for fire, EMS, and medical services, protesting, overtime with our police officers, our infrastructure, and how we look at our legal expenses, as well as a great impact to our local business stakeholders that's in that general area. We know right now FedEx has refused to deliver. In that industrial corridor, that's where shipping and receiving takes place for a lot of those businesses. So we shouldn't be impacted by something that we didn't create.
Wow. And yes, by all accounts, at the height of Operation Midway Blitz, that ICE processing center there in Broadview that protesters believe was really being used as a detention center, not a processing center, became the focal point of protests and even visits from federal authorities. I remember Christy Nome being on top of it, filming a video at one point in time. And so you're saying, I mean, this goes beyond just the immediate impact, but it's really the things that are ongoing for your community.
Yeah, so it's beyond the impact and the ongoing uptick of things that we have to consider all things. And yes, you're absolutely right. I'm in agreement that the intent was to be a processing center, which is temporary, but it created a detention where people were there for a number of days, which was, to me, unconstitutional as what that building was designed for. And so here we are. And so I am advocating for federal reimbursement, not only for the village, for the village of Broadview, because that's where my first priority lies, but also for all of the communities across this nation that has been impacted by federal operations that we don't control.
Mm-hmm. And it really wasn't an issue before Operation Midway Blitz there. I mean, you mentioned the fact that it's been sitting there, been operating in your community for many years.
That's correct.
So you're also calling on it to be closed.
Absolutely. I've always said that when former Secretary Nunn came to the village of Broadview to use our restrooms, that's when it was put on. For me, I saw that that's a building or a facility that's not conducive for public use. If she cannot use her own restroom in the facility that she's managing, what makes us, the public, think that it's safe for people to be there and be detained? And so I'm calling for the closure of that facility because it is not designed to, it may be nursing moms that's being detained there that can't properly pump milk. It just can't hold that. It don't have separate units for male restrooms or female restrooms. It's not a place for people. It's just inhumane. And it has no place to be in the village of Broadview, and the impact that it has created in this community with trauma and harm and the blatant disrespect that we've been getting.
If the federal government were to transfer the property over to the village, how would you all use it?
So I am a fellow with the Just Cities Fellows at Harvard Graduate School of Design. And so I visualize, even though in this trauma and this situation, I visualize that facility would be closed and that asset would be donated to the village of Broadview. And we're able to reimagine what that space would look like. Instead of calling it our industrial corridor, we will call it our Broadview Justice Corridor, because we deserve something that we can tell a story on this moment in history for us. It's created a lot of tension, a lot of trauma, and a lot of disruption. But we're able to tell the story based off all the information that we've received and put it into, like, maybe a museum or a civic center where we can do more community education for the public. And because the city of Chicago is a world-class city, why not bring something that holds so much to our truth in a moment of history to bring it to Broadview and something that we can create as meaningful work for the entire nation.
So you really look at re-envisioning the area and that building. Let me ask you this. You mentioned that there are other communities, obviously, and other mayors who may feel as you do. Are you all looking at like a class action type of thing here for reimbursement? Are you like joining forces, or just maybe speaking to each other as you're each looking for reimbursement?
Well, I have to be real honest with you. Broadview is a community of 8,000 people. We are a non-home rule community. And a lot of times we don't get the respect that we deserve in a situation that's brought national attention to our community. So, we just make decisions what's best for Broadview. There are those that want to collaborate with us and have intentional conversations on what reimbursement looks like for us across this nation. I'm open to those discussions. But my focus is Broadview right now and the impact that it has created in my own community.
Yeah, and what has it been like since Operation Midway Blitz? I mean, again, we watched week after week as the clashes between federal authorities and protesters, some who you indicated even in your press conferences weren't Broadview citizens, but people who came with passion for what was happening there, and week in and week out that played out. What has it been like since things have become more quiet again?
Well, the weather is always an indicator of people don't want to be in, inclement weather such as the Midwest that we carry here. So it's been quiet. We still have the protesters coming out to advocate for what they're vocalizing, and it has not been the tension that we saw early on. And we pray to God that continues on, that this can be, if you want to protest on behalf of the immigrants or those that's being detained or being processed, we encourage that. But we also want you to be mindful that we live here. That center is 600 feet away from a residential area. The majority of the protesters that's come are not Broadview residents. And so just have respect for the people that live in the village of Broadview, that we pay our police officers to do a job. We're not trying to be confrontational. Our police department is not want to be confrontational. And we have to put protocols and best practices in place to keep everyone safe, the protesters and our law enforcement officers.
You mentioned weather, and when Operation Midway Blitz was kind of dying down a bit, and we found out that Gregory Bravino, the commander, was leaving the area, and that some of the agents were going to be leaving the area. There was a comment from the federal government that they were not through. So to your point about the weather, if this were to pick back up when it gets warm outside again, if they were to tick back up with the operation and more people are being brought to and through the Broadview Center, what do you think you would do differently this time around?
Well, we would still have our unified commands team in place. We would hope that, our other law enforcement teams, such as Illinois State Police and Cook County Sheriff Department, will still collaborate with Broadview to help us, because we don't have crowd control in our department because we're small. We have 25 to 28 sworn officers. So we're so small where we can't even control the crowd. So we need that type of support from our local law enforcement, ISP, Cook County, and then our surrounding municipal law enforcement teams to kind of help us navigate through this. I think the unified command that we have structured in place have done an excellent job delivering the protection to keep people safe and out of harm's way. And I know that there's ongoing conversations with Broadview Police Chief Thomas Mills and those with ISP in Cook County on protocols and how we look at navigating through some of this to make it easier for people to be able to protest, but to also to keep the best interests of Broadview in place as well.
Okay, and just on a final note, $700,000 is what you're looking for in terms of reimbursement. How do you come to that number?
So we looked at what we paid out in our legal fees, what we, Broadview Police Department in overtime, the Broadview Fire Department with overtime, in the services that we had to render to transport patients outside of that facility over to the nearest hospital. And then we also looked at our losses of the business industrial corridors, those local businesses that wanted to share what their losses were. And so we identified the criteria in place, and we just continue to track what that looked like moving forward. But, we believe that we should be made whole because we didn't create this, and it's on our watch. But federal reimbursement, they should be responsible for the reimbursement and held accountable to making sure that we're made whole, the Village of Broadview and the businesses that do business in that area.
Village of Broadview Mayor Katrina Thompson, thank you again for joining us here on Chicago Live. We appreciate it.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Okay, take care. Everybody,
Bye-bye.
Give us 2 minutes and we'll be right back with our final conversation about the rat population throughout the city of Chicago, and a program that seems to be successful thus far and maybe changing things around here. Give us 2 minutes, we'll be back. Okay, welcome back, everyone. 3:45 right now, and I think we were all collectively pretty happy. Maybe happy might be the right word to find out we had lost the title of America's rattiest city back in the fall. Only getting knocked down one notch, behind Los Angeles. But there is a rat abatement program that apparently is working in our area, and maybe it'll cause us to fall down the list a little bit further. It was for Bucktown and Wicker Park, but maybe it'll get expanded very soon. Alice Howe is joining us now, and she's going to give us a little bit more information about the program. She is the program director for Special Services Area 33. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, first and foremost, just tell us, what is Special Services Area number 33?
Yeah, so we are essentially similar to a business improvement district. We are funded through property taxes in commercial districts, and we just help to beautify Wicker Park and Bucktown and keep it as lively and active as it is.
Mm-hmm. Lively, active, for the people, not for the rats. So tell us about your thoughts when you all had the opportunity to be a part of this program initially, and how it's gone.
Yeah, so we've been really thrilled with the outcome. We are approaching 1 year into the program, and so far it's been amazing feedback. So essentially we have a clean and green committee who focuses on litter abatement, landscaping, and beautifying our neighborhood. And through that, we have seen the damages and the outcomes that the rat population has had in Wicker Park and Bucktown. And we were just looking for alternatives. And we found this company a few years ago. We love the fact that it is not harming our environment, the pets, the children, our water systems. Everything about the product is just a positive for us, in our opinion, and now the data is also showing that, so we're very proud.
Well, let me take two parts of what you just said there, and I'd love for you to expound upon each one. First and foremost, you said damages that the rats, or what kind of damages were they causing?
Yeah, so they love to burrow in landscaping beds, and we maintain the landscaping beds in Wicker Park and Bucktown. So working with our landscape contractors, we were just having to constantly replace perennials and re-soil the landscaping beds. So we have trees that aren't necessarily thriving to the rate that they could be, and we just saw an opportunity to help our plants flourish and also alleviate another issue as well.
Okay, and then you talked about the actual contraceptive product. Tell me a little bit more about that and how it's not harmful to them.
Yeah, so the product is called Evolve with a company called Tech, and it is essentially a plant-based sausage that's injected with cottonseed oil, and it works just like human birth control. It needs to be consumed regularly, but within 6 to 8 weeks of consumption, it starts working in male and female rats. So rats can start reproducing after 1 month of living, and they can produce rapidly. So getting to the root cause of their fertility is just an effective way to approach this.
Very interesting. And then how did you all track all of this to know that there was a difference?
Yeah, so Tech has brought out field scientists, and they have been monitoring our district since August. So they came out in August of 2025, and they've placed tracking plates throughout our district where we have the product. They've come out 4 different times to do different readings. And since August of 2025, we have seen nearly 88% reduction in that activity.
80%?
Yes.
That is tremendous. Wow. Okay, so because of that kind of success this quickly, there's talk of expanding. What would that look like?
Yeah, so our SSA is quite large. We have nearly 14 miles of commercial district. So we'll be working with our commissioners, with our neighborhood to figure out where the next best places to launch this. We are only on the commercial streets of Wicker Park and Bucktown, so we can't go into the residential areas, but yes, we will definitely be keeping everybody posted on the next steps for this project.
Now, there's a conversation down the line that if this were to expand at some point in time, this is going to require a tax. And I think that's one of those like dirty words people around here hate to hear. So how do you talk to people about accepting not just the results that you all have seen, but the tax that may require having it for long term?
So right now, we aren't necessarily adding in any additional taxes. The way ours works is it's always just a set rate through the tax levy. And so we're not necessarily looking at increasing, or we aren't looking at increasing any taxes. That would be a discussion at a city level, but we just work with the budget that is given to us by the city. So.
Okay, so at you all's I said because you already know where I'm going with this. It may be out of you all's hands, but yeah, I mean, in order for it to continue going at some point in time, that's got to be a part of the discussion. Maybe not for you all, but let me ask you this. I mean, you're looking at it from you all's level for your community. What if it stops? Like once the pilot program is over, does this contraceptive stop them from having babies ever again? Or does it have to be administered for the rest of their life?
Yes, it does. The idea is that while it is a bigger investment at the beginning, we are starting to reduce that population. So it is definitely going to be a program that is a long-term program for us, but it's not going to be something that is going to be that initial cost always. Like as the population is decreasing, we're dispersing less product, which is also saving us money, and then we're able to reallocate those funds to a different program.
And
this pilot, we are hoping, or we are going to be expanding this to be a full-time project now. It is no longer going to be a pilot for us.
Okay, all right. So it's going full time already here. And then when you speak to some of the surrounding areas, like what are the questions that maybe some of the surrounding communities are asking you all about how you're getting it done and how you'll maintain it?
I think so we've had a lot of interest from other neighborhoods that are just interested in understanding the data and the impact it's having so far. So I know a lot of other neighborhoods are dealing with the same issues that we are with rats and are looking for solutions as well. So I do think that it is going to be something we're seeing more and more of in the city.
And is this typically what is typically the worst part of the year for the rats, for the humans when it comes to dealing with the rats?
I can't speak on that. I do know that they don't hibernate though, and so they are active year round.
Okay. Well, this has been very interesting to see. And again, I mean, as it expands, are you just going like, block to block as you expand it, or how are you expanding it?
So we haven't figured out the expansion yet. We will be announcing that, so stay tuned on how that is. But yes, we will be announcing that on our social media and on our website, wickerparkbucktown.com.
All right, we'll stay tuned for the latest development. Thank you so much for joining me here on Chicago Live. Really appreciate it. Can't wait to hear how this goes from here.
Thank you so much.
All right, you take care. That is an interesting discussion for sure. Let's talk a little bit about what's coming up a little bit later on, everybody. We're getting ready to switch things over here. I told you this is like our temporary home for the week. So we're going to end a little bit early so that the ladies for 4 o'clock can scoot in here. And boy, we have a lot more coming up for you in the next couple of hours here as we discuss a little bit more. You heard us kind of tease up what Paris is working on for today, having gone to the mayor's press conference today and really asking more questions about the firings that have recently happened there. Obviously, we're looking for more information about Broadview, trying to get more money back from Operation Midway Blitz, and it's very interesting to watch that as we do have kind of the winter months kind of tailing off, and now we are definitively in spring. What will happen next, and so much more. We didn't get to the weather today here on the show, but you know that'll be coming up next at 4 as well. So plenty more to come in just a few moments here. Just hold tight, and of course we'll see you back here for another round of Chicago Live coming up tomorrow between the hours of 1 and 4. Hope to see you then.
Live from Chicago, this is Fox 32 News at 4.
It's almost 4 o'clock. Let's get to it. Long lines and ICE agents are spotted at O'Hare Airport, but could Congress be nearing a deal to pay TSA agents and end the travel